Sorry, like all my okay.
Hi, everybody. We're just discussing having tea while we do this. This is Jennifer Otter Bickerdike, and I'm absolutely, so excited to be interviewing you for the live stream. Jennifer is a cultural historian. She's written best-selling books on topics like Britney Spears. And more than I'm sure you'll tell us more about what you do, but she has collaborated with Andrew Ridgeley of Wham fame. I mean, if nothing else, that's enough for me, everybody. And if your next meeting, if you need somebody to look after your handbag.
Well, I have to say, like, the first Zoom I did with Andrew, I did it with a representative from his record label, and she had COVID. So she was in bed. And you know how, like, I am very smart and I can speak, but you also know, Susan, like, you're very well spoken and you never drop an F-bomb. You never accidentally talk about oral sex or anything like that. Me, sometimes stuff slips out. You know what I mean? So the first conversation I had with Andrew is Andrew and I live on Zoom, and then the record label lady had really bad COVID and was sick in bed. So she had her camera off because she didn't know what I would say to Andrew Ridgeley. And she said to me, she prepped me, she's like, Andrew is very, very proper, very, very posh. And I'm like, oh no, you know what I mean? And like, you're talking, I mean, I've dealt with quite a few famous people, but it's Andrew Ridgeley from Wham! You know what I mean? Like, yeah, it's like, yeah, exactly. And it was hilarious because she couldn't come on, the labeled girl couldn't come on the camera because she was so poorly, So I think she was there just to pull the emergency brake in case things went really awry. But by the end, I mean, I had him laughing, and like after that, he and I would just call each other and like do the work without her there. And I mean, I think I told you, there's a bar next door to my house here in Devon that has a meat raffle. And by the end of the project, I was sending him pictures of the meat raffle and the bless them, the toothless people that attend the meat raffle and like all the crazy stuff that happens down here in Devon, and just random pictures and stuff. So he's just the nicest, sweetest, most generous guy. Like, I love Andrew.
Oh.
So yeah, you can totally hold my purse and you will go crazy because he's so sweet.
Oh, brilliant. I look forward to it. And I'm going to come down to see you anyway.
You have to. You're making me want to cut my hair, by the way. I have a hair appointment on Friday and I'm thinking about chopping.
Yeah, do it like
Are you loving it? Yeah.
Now Liz Truss has gone, we can all have.
Oh, that's right. Oh, I didn't thought about that, but yeah, that did kind of make me go.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I was mistaken for her with some of my.
No.
Yeah, I know, scary, but yes.
Oh Lord. Okay, sorry. Let's go back to the topic. You and I going off into the yonder. Sorry about that.
Yeah, sorry everybody who's watching. And if you are listening in, if you are watching, please put any comments in the comment section. I know that there are going to be people that watch this afterwards, and I know Jennifer would take questions later on. This is all about the fact that we believe that there are many, many talented women and men who are not getting their voice across in the media, and particularly more mature women. Mm-hmm. And one of the conversations that I had with you beforehand, because we've been reaching out, having good chats, was an extraordinary situation at the podcast show back in May. Now, I would say that I was the oldest woman there, which in itself is quite scary. And I went up, and all of these speakers, they were predominantly men. No problem with that if there aren't many women podcasting. However, there are many women podcasting. There are women podcasting of all ages. And I went to the BBC. There was a stand, and they are doing some fantastic outreach work on podcasting to underrepresented groups. However, women over 45 do not appear in that at all. And I had a little chat with them, as one does.
I would not want to be on the other end, by the way, of your, because you're like you're pretty, you're so, like, well put together, and, like, you seem, like, so sweet, but, like, you're like the scorpion coming in with a sting. Like, I would not wanna be on the Ooh! Anyway, go
I
ahead, yeah.
I was very polite. I was
I'm
very
sure you
polite.
were.
And I said that I observed the fact that there was no representation of women from any community over the age of 45, really. And I said, I've looked at all of the images. Oh, of course, women can podcast. They want to talk about menopause.
Mm, yeah, I
Really?
mean
That's what we want to talk about? And there was one woman that was featured who'd been in one of these, I think it was The Apprentice, and
mm,
she was doing a podcast. It was clearly a business thing, and she got sponsors and everything. No problem with that. However, at the short amount of time that we were there listening to her, it was vulgar.
mm. Was she, like
If
was it vulgar like how I'm vulgar, like
No,
F-bombs and
it was a completely different level of vulgarity.
okay.
And everybody was sort of laughing in an embarrassed way. And yet this, someone was being given a platform when is this representing women
Mhm.
on podcasts? So obviously she's younger than us, but I wanted your thoughts on this.
Well, I didn't see this particular person, so
No.
I'll put her to the side, but I will say, I mean, I have so many thoughts on this. I mean, first of all, I think you personally are I mean, I don't know how long different people that are on here or watching this have been following you. But I mean, I remember asking you about podcasting literally probably 5 or 6 years ago. Like you
Yes,
are someone that has really been not just with podcasting, but with media in general. I mean, I've known you for almost 10 years now, I think. And like you've always been, I'm not just saying this to be kind, but you're always a forward thinking individual and not and I think right now there's been this flood of people seeing I mean, I've had people say to me, "Oh, podcasting is like the wild, wild west." So it really reminds me, as someone that lived in the Bay Area of San Francisco for a long time, of that gold rush, Silicon
yes,
Valley, and people don't want to get left out. So everybody's like flocking into it. I think you really got into it literally as an extension of your brand and not in a cheesy, like, oh, this is an extension of my brand. You saw it as another way to get information and
yes,
share what you're good at with a larger amount of people. And that's genuinely I think that's so genuine, and that's I think what your I hate to I think when you say, "Oh, that's what my brand's about," that sounds like so vomit in the mouth, like, "Oh, my brand's about this." But that for you, I think, is genuinely like you want people to do their best, and
yes.
that's why you started podcasting, that's why you do the live stream, correct?
Absolutely, and I've been podcasting for 8.5 years.
Yeah.
So certainly in the United Kingdom, I was a very, very early adopter
Yeah,
of
so
this.
if we look at it like that, it's like to me, the BBC and other big platforms should be seeking people like you out who are well spoken and who are the every woman in a lot of ways. I
Yes,
mean, this is to me like a big thing because I think, and I've always like I'm really, as you know, I'm really tall, but people can't tell this here. I think one thing that I've always said is, like I'm tall and I'm loud and I'm blonde, but otherwise I'm like just good looking enough to be attractive, but not so good looking that I'm scary. You know what I mean? And the reason I bring that up is because I represent kind of the every person. And I
yes,
think you're the same way. It's like and now that we're of a certain age, like, oh, do we dare to be 35? It's like, I think it's so important that we show not just people our age, which is important, but younger women that you can still be sexy and cool and smart and reinventing yourself, not just at 20, 30, 40. You can do it at 50, you can do it at 60, you can do it at 70. Like you can continue to do that and be
absolutely.
and it doesn't have to be crass. It doesn't have to be you being like, "Oh, I gave a blowjob under a table," or whatever this weird lady was saying that you're talking about. You
Oh,
can you can make that part of it, but that's not or just talking about menopause. You can be a full person with, like, all the different array of conversation pieces, and just because you pass a birthday does not make you not be able to comment or talk or vibrate. In fact, it makes you more interesting,
yes.
you know?
But do you think that the media is not representing that?
No. No, not at all. I mean, that's the whole thing. It's funny because since you and I had that talk, Susan, what I've really been noticing is my reaction to older women and things. I know it probably sounds I'm not directly answering your question, but when I think about who does the media show as being an attractive woman, like the attractive older woman, we're talking about like there's like in the media it's kind of two things. Like in the media could be like someone like you or I that has a podcast or is a talking head or something like that. If you look at that, like I was telling you the other day, like I know you're not a big Ryland fan. I love Ryland for the UK people, but you don't see really older. When I say older, I'm talking over 35. You don't really
Yeah,
see older women breaking into or going on the BBC or suddenly like being on TV and being a presenter. Like you don't see that wisdom and being like, okay, well they can change careers in the same way you see men being able to do that over the age of 30. When I think of like women that are older that are seen as being sexy and cool and attractive, it's presented as the anomaly, not as normality. So it's always like Helen Mirren, who is a total hot babe. It's always Susan Sarandon, who again, I had her picture as my avatar for a long time because a couple years ago she wore this push-up bra and had the girls out, and she looked hot as hell, you know. Judy Dench, it's like kind of like that trifecta that dare to be like old and hot, and everybody else is just like, oh well, they're
invisible.
aging. Yeah, invisible.
They're
That's just it.
invisible.
Mhm.
But do you think that the only way that women can be represented on the media is for their looks over a certain age?
That's a really good question, and I think that's what I'm finding myself looking at. Like I was watching, have you seen The Watcher on Netflix?
No.
It's so good. Uh, but that's what I was finding myself thinking about a lot because I'm thinking about myself as someone that's been told a lot of times for my life that, you know, I'm good looking or whatever. And my husband says like my husband's now known me for 13 years and he will say, "Yeah, you look older now than when I met you." And I'm like, "What? No, I don't. I look exactly the same." You know, of course, I'm gonna look older. I don't think I look older, but I am 13 years older. You know, I'm like married to you, child. That's why I look older. But the but I find myself looking like when I'm watching The Watcher, it has Naomi Watts in it, and I'm a big Naomi Watts fan. I'm like, she looks haggard. Like I find myself thinking that, even though she's beautiful, and it has Jennifer Coolidge in it, who I've watched in a lot of things. I'm like, she looks bloated, man. I find myself making these judgments of these women, and it's all because of their looks, not how they're acting, not how the part they're playing, but it's like them looking older. And I'm like, you know, so it's kind of like I'm reflecting back on myself. I'm so scared of those things on myself, and you don't see that happening with men at all, you know.
No, and that's really interesting because you're consciously aware of that.
Mhm.
What's it like for other women and men? Because
Mhm.
men will, with respect, men will be doing that as well towards
Yeah.
women.
You don't see men, I mean, it's a joke my husband and I always joke about where my husband's like, "How much is that life insurance if you go first?" You know what I mean? And so I'm like, "You're just gonna go upgrade for some like 25-year-old." And but think about it, like that's the thing. Like this is something that I never can get over is you never if a woman is dating someone younger than when I say significant, I mean like 10 years. I'm going a little bit off the topic now of women in the media, but it's kind of all the same thing. It's just we're talking about the double standard here. If you're dating someone, because let's call a spade, Susan. If you and I were to get divorced or something were to happen, you and I would be on the prowl like two cougars on the loose, girlfriend. You know it. And I would be the problem is that you have a son that's like in his early 20s.
Who
But
will be editing this?
yeah, oh no, sorry, Nick. Sorry. The thing is though, is like I can't like I would be like, okay, yeah, I'd go for a 30-year-old. Like, and of course they're gonna want a piece of this hot poo-tang, you know what I mean? Like I would I would assume they would want to date me because I still think I'm really hot. Like that's the whole thing. But that have a 50-year-old going for a 30-year-old, like that is not something. I mean, even to say I'm 50 sounds bizarre, you know? But that a 50 to 30-year-old is just like that could be her child. You don't hear that with men. Like if a man is dating someone 20 years younger, you don't hear people saying that could be his daughter. It's just like, oh well, that's how it's supposed to be.
Yeah, that's really interesting
I'm all
because in
over the
fact
place here. Sorry,
immediately
dude.
I
What you said?
immediately think, "Oh, he's a daughter, granddaughter."
Do
Um,
you?
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
You're so much nicer than me. So I think I've been
Yeah.
in Hollywood too long. I just assume it's the girlfriend or a wife that's been paid for or something, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? But
Certainly with, because it's not just the media. When we have SEO, and there are algorithms of what we see, aren't
mhm,
there? Adverts from Google. For some reason, during the pandemic, because of my age, I
mhm.
was getting funeral service
Were
at
you?
yeah, absolutely,
No.
and things like that, absolutely, and now it's, dating things for senior women. It says senior
No.
women, and with respect, you look at some of the men,
Well, that's
they
what I'm saying. There's, like, no way in hell you'd go out that's where I was going to with that. It's like, you're like, these there's definitely a cross like, those people should be in the grave that are on these apps. It's like, they look like they just climbed out of the crypt. I'm not gonna date these people if I was single, like, no way in hell.
and you think, "Oh, they've hidden their Zimmer frames." I mean, it's
Yeah.
just hilarious, but clearly the algorithms as well on Google think that if you're over 45, you are a mature woman and you're
Yeah,
gonna
yeah.
go for a 70-year-old man.
Yeah, well, like, in going back to the very beginning, you were saying and that you're obsessed with menopause. I mean, what's
Me,
interesting?
I'm not obsessed by menopause,
No,
but
I mean,
the BBC are.
yeah. I mean, what's interesting is I don't know, like one of my best friend in America, like she is obsessed with she's always asking me, like, have you had the hot flashes yet? Like she's asking me, how's your hair? Like all these things, you know. And I'm like, I don't like I'm 50, like I should be in it. Like I don't know. Like I
Yeah,
don't know, you know. Um, but then I've talked to other friends that are just like, you know what, it's just not that big of a deal. So I think it's just like anything. Like some people have it bad, some people don't. There's,
yeah, and
you
we
know,
have to sympathize with those people that
yeah,
have
of
very bad
course. But
symptoms, but
it
it's
doesn't have
not
to
the
take
only
over your
thing we
life. Yeah,
it's not the only thing we're thinking of,
yeah,
and
exactly.
it was really disappointing when I heard that.
Hmm.
Obviously, it's a reflection of one person, but
Do you know what I
one
think is
just
a much bigger topic? Can I just say this? And this thing I think is not addressed is that more what we're kind of dancing around, but we've kind of said it a little bit, is that at 50, you realize that I still have time to do stuff. Like I'm still, if you're lucky, you're still somewhat in decent health. You know what I mean? Or if you're not in the best of health, there's still some time to kind of turn it around. Um, but you start like your kiddo is off at grad school now, correct?
yes.
Right? So, like, you have an empty nest, it's just you and the husband, so it's like, you start looking around and going, "Do I actually like my husband? Do I like my life? Do I like me? Like, what's going on?" And it's if you're gonna make that change, now is the time to do it, and it's a time of either putting your head in the sand and going, "Okay, I guess this is it," or having to take some real stock in your life and yourself, which is terrifying and scary. Um, and we're not really actively encouraged to do that in a lot of ways as a woman over a certain age. It's kind of like, well, this is your lot in life, just like free fall to the grave now. Does that make sense?
I think there's an element of that, isn't there, that, that you can't be as adventurous as a man.
Yeah.
And one of my very dear friends, she has gone off for 4 months to Mexico on her own, and
Ooh,
she's learning Spanish, she's doing some art
I love
courses,
that.
going traveling, and I mean, it's just absolutely superb. And there was that tiny moment when I thought, "Oh, that's brave." Then I
Yeah.
thought, "Go for it."
Go do it, girl. I mean, that's like straight up Stella got her groove back. Isn't it? Do you know that book?
Yeah,
Yeah. I mean, it's straight Stella got her groove back, but that is the whole thing, and that goes back to it being an anomaly for a woman to do that, but not a man,
yes,
you know. And I think that's the thing. I think one of the when I was really actively, I mean, I still do work a lot with young people, but I think for me one of the scariest things, and that's changed a lot over the 20 years that I've dipped in and out of teaching at different universities, is in the early 2000s when I was teaching in San Francisco. There definitely was still a feeling with young women that there was a lot of work to be done in terms of equality. And at least in America, the F word feminist was still um, a bad word and like what it meant and what equality meant. That was something that was still really trying people were trying to work out what that looked like and what that was. And I feel like now we've kind of come to the other side of that where it's assumed there's equality, like you're talking about, like you are encountering a whole setup from the BBC who are probably would want to think of themselves as the most inclusive, as the most, I hate to say woke, but the most checking the boxes for everybody. And yet the shop is completely closed for this huge group of people that are so underrepresented and so desperate for a voice,
Absolutely, and
you
I
know?
think you've hit the nail on the head there. It's I would say that from a point of view of inclusivity,
Mhm,
age is one of those groups,
mhm.
stereotypes,
Huge.
um, and particularly for women over a particular age, and all races, not exclusively white like
Yeah.
us. And I know that you know that the older women that are represented have been there for years.
Yes, there's no new fresh blood in the mix.
No, there's no new opinion, no new
Mhm.
voice that could disrupt any conversations and debates.
Do you think though, like I have 2 funny stories, but I have a question for you, and that is, I do wonder though that I was just having this strangely, I was talking to my US accountant, as one does, who is, a Southern Black gay man, as one has, of course, and he was just going off yesterday to me. Like, I called up to work on my taxes, and suddenly he was just off telling me about trying to adopt a child as a gay Black man in the South in America, and I was, the tax stuff came at the very end of the conversation, as you can imagine. But the point
And
to
he
this
charged you for it.
What'd you say?
He charged you for the
Oh my
conversation.
god, I swear to God, I'm like, I had to call my UK accountant today, and he's like, "How was your conversation with Jeremiah?" And I'm like, "It was more like a therapy session for Jeremiah. I should have been charging him, I swear." But anyway, where I'm going with this is, I said to Jeremiah, and of course his name is Jeremiah, I said, "Jeremiah, there's so few situations I feel like now where you can have a conversation and you could be like, I really 100% disagree with you, but let's unpack why we disagree." And a um there's a there's a playing field there where we both put down our arms, if you would, and be like, you're a good person, I'm a good person, we just have differing views, let's try to figure this out. And that's a huge issue. So when we're going back to the beginning here, the differing voices, I think there people say they want differing voices, but they don't really, because we're so quick to cancel people and not listen or understand or try to figure out where they're coming from. Like that's a big issue we have in general right now, and that's why
Definitely.
why the world is the way it is. But what I was going to say though is, a couple things have happened to me in the last couple of years that have been massive game changers for me. One is I've gotten really close to my aunt who is 75. And I realized that I think being somewhat of a sex pest is a hereditary thing because my aunt is a your face. My aunt is a marathon runner. So she does at 75, she's doing like 100-mile marathons, right? And she last time I went home before COVID to California, and we went on this hike, and these firemen were there like doing some sort of like practice thing. And my aunt's like, go get a picture taken with them, Jennifer. They're hot. Okay. And I mean, the guys were probably like 30s. They were younger than me and way younger than my aunt, but she was just like, ooh, hubba hubba. And like I was talking to her couple months ago, and she's like, "Oh, I had a great run today. I saw some hot men on the trail." And I was like, "Aunt Janet, you go, girl." And she's like, "Jennifer Catherine, you're never too old to appreciate good horse flesh." And I was just like, "Oh," but that the thing about it, which you might be horrified, but I like that because like, there's this idea that you are not looking at men, you're not like appreciating men, you're not sexual, you're not having desires, like that just goes away. And she's very much shown me that you can still be appreciating a hot guy. You can still be, like, ooh, like doing the old Tom Cruise risky business, lowering the glasses, being like, ooh, you know what I mean? I love that about her. I mean, it probably sounds creepy the way I'm saying it, but,
No, it's funny, but it does make sense
you
that
know
there's so much not stereotyping's the wrong word, but putting women in boxes,
Mhm.
and that the only people that are relevant could because I know that you mentioned a particular broadcaster who was brought in with no broadcasting
Mhm.
experience to cover for someone else on Radio 2,
This happens
and you
all the time, Susan, all the
yeah,
time. I'm like, why are Susan and I not on here? I mean, there's a little bit of the Incredible Hulk green going on, but I'm like, we have way more experience than these freaks of nature they have on.
and they're a name,
Yeah.
and but they brought nothing to it, and I
Mhm.
don't know if they're ticking the box because it's a woman, ticking a box because it's from, an underrepresented group,
Mhm.
but does it bring anything to the party?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I guess the thing that that story was about my aunt was saying is that it shows me like one of my other friends I've made quite I'm sure you're the same. You've made friends doing your podcast, you know. So like some of the people
Yes.
you interview have turned into your friends. I interviewed a woman that she runs the female skateboarding team for Santa Cruz Skateboards in my hometown. And she introduced me to this phrase, which is possibility model. So
Ooh.
yeah, isn't that great? And
Yes.
I think what my aunt showed me is a possibility model. Like, I just assumed I think you don't assume this as a woman. You don't go, "Oh, I'm totally not gonna be sexual," or "I'm totally gonna be old and disgusting when I'm over 40." You just kind of go, "Well, I'm gonna be, you know, meh." But my aunt showed me that you can still be vibrant and interesting. And I mentioned to you a friend I'm friends with a well-known celebrity from the what best known from the '80s, Susanna Hoffs, who was lead singer of the Bangles. And she's another one that's been a great possibility model for me because she's in her early 60s, has not had any plastic surgery, does a lot of social media, just goes on with very little makeup, will just be goofy and like dance around, be like, "Blah, it's me," you know. And she spent 6 years writing a fiction book for fun because she's always wanted to do a book, and turned it into an agent at the urging, like a literary agent at the urging of a friend, and now has a massive book deal, has a deal with Netflix, and she's completely reinvented herself in her early 60s. And I always say to her, I'm like, Sue, you like, of course I love the Bangles. Of course I mean, I had pictures of the Bangles up in my room when I was a kid. But as a woman, as an adult, seeing someone older than me completely take like not just like a kind of turn. She goes, "Roar!" I mean, she could retire right now. She doesn't even have to work, but she's doing things she's dreamed of doing her whole life, Susan, and doing it to like the nth extent is so inspiring. It's a possibility model for all of us. Like, why not put yourself out there, you know?
I mean, that is just an incredible story.
Isn't it?
It's
Mhm.
absolutely amazing because
Yeah.
she's the same age, isn't she, as Madonna?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And I mean, like, what do you think of have you seen Madonna lately?
I saw a very, very scary
Oh.
photo and it broke my heart.
Oh, girl. Did I tell you about the picture? I can't remember if it was you guys telling the one of her in I think she was at Heathrow where she had the big puffer coat on and she just I'm just like yesterday, I think it was yesterday, I was doing some writing and things like my mind is like a jukebox. Like not the songs from Desperately Seeking Susan, which is the big Madonna film from the '80s, but the score. The score from Desperately Seeking Susan started like playing in my mind. And so I like found it online, I started playing it, and I started looking at pictures from Desperately Seeking Susan. And if you've not seen it, or if you don't remember it, it's Madonna basically plays Madonna, but she plays
Yeah.
this woman that lives to the beat of her own drum. And I'm looking at these pictures going, I can't believe my parents let me see this. It's like an 11-year-old child. I watched this and it had such an indelible impact on me. Like I didn't realize till like as an adult watching it, the idea of just being yourself, just not giving a hoot about what anyone thinks of you. And just living by your own rules, as cliche as that is. And in a way, Madonna is still doing that, but in a way, she's completely not doing that because the amount of plastic surgery she's had, the way she's trying to still look young. That's one of the things with Susanna that I love. Susanna's not had any plastic surgery at all and she's
She's
kind of yeah,
herself.
she's just like, "This is how I look." I mean, one of the things she was telling me is she's trying to, she kinda wants she has brown hair, but she's dyes her hair, and she kind of wants to just let it go all white. And there is this kind of weird thing between she is a sex symbol from the 80s, and there's an expectation that she looks a certain way. And
Yes.
I can feel that, and I ask her a lot about being a sex symbol. Like, I can't even, I mean, I know the pressure I feel, I know the pressure you feel, but we're just normal people. I can't imagine being a celebrity like that. So I feel for Madonna, and I want her to be happy. If it makes her happy looking like that, fantastic. But
Yeah,
no,
absolutely.
Susanna's a possibility model. To me, Madonna has just almost erased that legacy in a lot of ways. I don't know any other way to put it. It makes me uncomfortable to look at her. I think that's probably a better way to put it.
I think you've hit the nail on the head, really. Is this a mask for,
Yeah.
avoiding
Yes.
admitting that you're aging?
Yeah.
Excuse me.
Yeah. Have you ever had any Botox or anything like that
No,
on your skin?
nothing,
Really?
nothing.
You have such good skin. Oh my god, you have such good skin. Such good skin. I've had Botox multiple times. Not
Have you?
recently though, but I have had it. Like the best time I had it during COVID. I went in to get my dental appointment, and I saw on the wall at the dentist, they're like, "Oh, you can now get Botox at the dentist." And my mouth's all stretched out because I'm at the dentist. I'm all, "Hiya, hiya, ga, ga." And the dentist lady is like, "Oh yeah, I just took a class in it over the weekend." She's like, "I need people to practice on. Do you want to come in?" And I'm like, "Why not? No one's seeing me." You know what I mean? And so so, um, she did it. She did the Botox, and I mean, it turned out fine. But the thing that what she did is she did filler on my face. And that is like it's totally gone now. It was like years ago this happened. But that's like a slippery slope because she put it in on one side of my face, and then she held up a mirror, and it was like one side of my face was like much more lifted than the other. And at that point, it's like I couldn't be like, "Oh, actually, no, just don't do the other side." But she's like, "Look, you look like Droopy Dog on the other side." Like,
Oh
she's
my
telling me
goodness.
that. She's like, "Look at the lift. Look at your jowls are gone." I'm like, "Jowls? Jowls?" But you can see how, like, and I left like 1,000 pounds. That 1,000 pounds I didn't have to be spending on dentist injectables. I left. You know what I mean? But you can see how you get into that like
You
rhythm.
can really get into
Yeah.
that. I
Mhm.
agree. But let's go back to this, the art of possibility, the
Yeah.
possibility model.
Mhm.
And certainly for the media and for us as every women,
Mhm.
what could we do to try and disrupt the what's going on at the media at the moment?
Well, first of all, I think you personally are such a great example of that. I think
Thank you.
most important thing, this is my opinion, I'd like to hear what you think. I think the most important thing is how you walk through the world, which probably sounds so cheesy and so hashtag California, but I am from Santa Cruz, so I can't help myself. But I try, I try my best I try just to be myself and be the person that I want to encounter, if that makes sense. Like, be straight talking, tell people how it is, and be as kind as I possibly can be. And I just posted something on Instagram before I went on, and I don't know about you, but it's so easy, especially working from home as much as I do, to like just, and I find myself, I've done this so much for the last couple of years, like not wash my hair or not put my makeup on, or I'll be like, "Oh, this doesn't smell that bad, this hoodie." But like I feel so much better. Like, these are earrings that one of my homegirls, shout out Shannon Smith, made for me, and she gave them
Lovely.
to me. So like just feeling and looking good, that is disruptive in and of itself because you're saying I care about how I look and how I feel and how I project myself onto the world, and that in of itself is disruptive, I think. And taking up space in terms of your voice and what you put out.
Yes.
One last thing, I was on the tube a couple weeks ago, and I go in, there's, like, 1 seat, right? And the 2 seats, like, on either side were dudes, and they were just completely,
Oh,
like,
the man split.
yeah,
Okay.
and I just went in there and I was like, "This ain't happening, child." I just went in there, I had, like, a rolling bag. I went in there, I'm 6 feet tall, I sit down, and I was wearing, like, leather pants. I totally splayed my legs, so they had to close theirs, bring my suit. I was just like, "Welcome to the world of a woman, homie." Mhm. You put that away. What do you think, though? What do you think? Sorry.
I'm still, I'm still working that one
Oh,
out.
you know, and you know I'm
I
doing the
mean,
faces.
absolutely. One thing that I often say with particularly women is to own our space, because
Mhm,
naturally we are told, you know, we take up less space, and
mhm,
owning it. And
mhm.
that doesn't mean by man spreading and everything else, but holding your head up, chest open, making
Yes.
sure that you use your gestures and things like that to own the space, be bigger physically, and with your with oh, I've got my mind's gone, with your presence.
Yeah.
And that's often something that we are told not to do.
Mhm,
And people hearing our voice,
mhm.
us being present in the media, whether it is we get to the BBC, or whether we've got a live stream like this, or a podcast, or any of those other things, which doesn't involve us doing selfies, then we are making an impact in the world.
Yeah, I mean, you're just making me think of so many things. I mean, I was just talking to a PR friend of mine yesterday, and like
Mm.
I do worry all the time because I just won't take shit from people. And I know that I probably have a reputation for being a pain in the butt or being a difficult woman or whatever. And I'm like, you know what? Like, as a woman, you pretty much still only have you can either be like a pushover or whatever, or you can be a bitch. And I'm like, you know what? I'll take the bitch any day because I'm worth being a bitch. I'm Nobody's going to care more about my career than me, and no one's going to care more about how I look. And when I mean look, not just look, but like how I'm presented and what I'm about than me. And if I'm just saying this because I have agents and stuff like that, like I need to make sure that's exactly how I want to be. And if that means I'm a bitch or difficult, then too bad. That's just the way it is. But I do remember one other thing I'm going to say. When I was younger, a lot of times, and this really impacted my self-esteem, I would have guys tell me a lot, university a lot. They'd be like, if you just would stop talking so much, you're really pretty, but if you just stop talking so much, you would be so much more attractive. And because I'm so tall, like I swear I still have like ET posture. Like I'm like, "Ugh." And I try, I try really hard now when I think of it to pretend like I'm just on a runway. I'm sure my walk does not look RuPaul ready at all, but I try just to be like, okay,
Own
oh,
your
own it.
height.
Own
Now
it.
we've got a mutual friend who has just commented,
Oh.
Sarah Alice Dean.
Oh, I love Sarah Alice Dean. Hey, girl. Where can you see this comment? I guess you can see because you're a.
Oh, I can see them on the side.
Okay.
Thank you, Sarah. I really, really appreciate you being here.
Aw.
But I think, the discussion, it's really interesting because it's gone from the media to the fact that we, as perhaps particularly older women,
Mhm,
need to own our presence, own our voice, not be afraid to disrupt,
mhm.
and to have our eyes open to possibility.
Could I ask you one last question? I can feel you're trying to wrap this up, which is fine, but one last question, and that is, it makes me feel so weird to hear you say me as, like, an older woman, and it feels weird to see myself, like, written about. I got, like, a letter from the NHS, and they were talking about me, and it said, "A 50-year-old woman." I'm like, "Who's this who who's this 50-year-old woman?" Because there's a sassy queen right here, not a 50-year-old woman. And that's like the biggest disconnect. It's like in my mind, and Sarah is probably cracking up because she knows me. Like in my mind, I'm still like, the hot tamale. And that's, I think, a big part of it. It's like, why can't you be the 50-year-old woman and the hot tamale? Especially when you're wearing a shirt that says, she's blonde.
But it's true. We in our hearts, we're still 17,
Yeah.
bopping away to Dancing Queen, aren't we? At the
I mean,
local school bop.
yeah, we started off talking about Andrew Ridgeley and how both of us are still like, panting like, hose and heat, which you would if you saw him. You know. Do you have a last word here that you want? Do you want me to say something intellectual and thoughtful to wrap it up?
Well, if you could just share 3 top tips to kind of owning your space in the
Mm.
media. That would be great to wrap up.
I would say, you know what's really important? This is going to sound again like vomit inducing, but I would say really try to have an idea of don't just post stuff on social media. Try to be like, okay, what are the three things? And this is so hard to do, but I always think like if like you, Susan, if my friend Susanna from the Bengals, and if my aunt, like here's three women, totally different areas of my life, but I respect and worship all of you. If you were to see this post, would I be mortified? You know what I mean? Would I be okay with you seeing it? And I know it sounds like a silly thing, but like think of all the times that people put like pictures of them drinking or pictures of them like just something that's quite innocuous, but is that really why are you showing that part off? Like, what's that about? You know? I say that's one top tip. Think of three people from different parts of your life before you post anything on social media. And why are you posting it up? I think that's another thing.
Yeah, that what's the
You know?
purpose of it?
What's the purpose of it? Yeah, that's one tip. I would this is probably not exactly what you wanted me to do, but I would say do a scrub of all your social media. Google yourself, Google all the images of you, see what's out there, and just try to be very cognitive all the time of like
That's a good point.
what it is that's out there. And if you're in the media, again, like sorry, I'm kind of repeating things, but just even like an innocuous tweet or something that could come back to haunt you. So just remember that social media is your front window. Like if you were a store, that is your storefront, but it's a storefront that never goes away. So you have to just be vigilant of it. I think way too, I mean, the things that come through on my phone, Susan, I'm just like, oh my Lord. Like I just people just seem to think it's just like all it takes is like a screen grab and then people's lives can be their careers could be, not in a good place.
That's a really, really good point and
Mhm.
really good way to wrap up.
Is that good? It's not very inspiring, I'm sorry. It's just
Well, I hope this has been inspiring for everybody. Remember that you can contact Jennifer. If you listen to this on the podcast, I will put her email address.
bless you.
She has written some fantastic books, which you must buy
Oh,
from
bless.
Amazon and other things, including the one on Britney Spears, which I know you have been on the media an awful lot
Oh,
discussing
more than
her life.
300 interviews, girl. I think I stopped counting at 360 interviews. I'm like, I can't count
I mean,
anymore.
that's extraordinary.
I can't count anymore.
And, let's start a campaign for Jennifer to get onto Radio 2 talking
Oh,
about whole cultural history, because don't you think that her radio show would be absolutely awesome?
I love you. Yes, let's do that. We'll have two. It'll have three. If we get Sarah to sign, we'll have three signatures.
Yeah.
You're fantastic, Susan. Thank you so much for having me. I really
That's my
appreciate it.
pleasure. So until next time, this is Susan Heaton Wright from Superstar Communicator. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.